Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the art of wire. I'm so excited today to present to you how to make design elements. What is a design element? A design element is making a particular design that you're really doing mostly freestyle and turning it into a piece of jewelry. So this is 16 gauge. This is my key ring. And I added 2 apatite gemstones. And this is 18 gauge. This is my pendant. And what we're going to be making today is the same design element, but we're going to make it into earrings. So the purpose of this tutorial is to teach you how to take something like this. This again is a design element, and turn it into this, a bracelet. This is shungite. By the way, you guys, this is available. If you don't know about shungite, I highly recommend you do research and look it up. It is only found in Karelia in Russia. It is the only natural rock known and scientifically proven to prevent and protect you against EMFs. EMFs are electromagnetic fields, and we are bombarded by them, by our cell phones. Oh my God, the radiation coming from our cell phones today is insane. Don't believe me? Go do your own work. So I've been investing in shungite lately, been making bracelets for men and women to protect their hearts when they're using their phones and their ears. I've been making pendants, I've been making ankle bracelets, etc. So I really encourage you to look into it. Anyways, that little spiel. This is another example of a design element. Here's another design element that I equally turned into a bracelet. So it's very similar to the last one, but I didn't complete the circle of coils. I brought it down. So the whole idea is to take something that you're playing with and making and just feeling, artistic, because I believe a person's best work is when they're totally in free flow and have total artistic freedom. I don't draw, so for me, everything is going to be unique. So that being said, today we're going to make the same design element. So this again is 18. I want you to see the difference in the gauges. This is 16, 18, 16, and today we're going to be using 20 for the earrings. Now, before we get started, you guys, I know it's been a spell since I have done a tutorial. Really appreciate if you support my channel. 99% of all the wire artists out there with likely 5,000 subscribers minimum are getting compensated by YouTube. It's called monetization, and it's based on how many followers, how many likes, how many comments, how many actual hours people are, viewing your video. So I'm learning a lot about this, which is why I stepped back, because I've been so busy and I just couldn't afford to spend a lot of time doing all these free tutorials. I'm in 2 galleries now and also between my social media. So just wanted to give you a heads up about that. Secondly, I am not a videographer or a fancy editor. A lot of these artists out there have just seemed to master making gorgeous, beautiful, fluffy, very, very pretty videos. Mine are raw and to the point. The point is I'm here to provide to you for free unbelievable tips and techniques to accelerate your journey in this ancient art of wire. And it is an ancient art, and I really encourage you to do your homework and do some research on it and really value the thousands of hours of dedication it takes to take a piece of wire and create it into a piece of art. So let's get started. So the first thing I did is I cut myself 6 pieces of 20 gauge wire. I'm using round, and the reason why I'm using round is I've used square on these, so I thought it would be really nice to use round as well, especially for beginners. And on that note, just for everyone out there, if you're new to my channel, and if you're an advanced or intermediate student, I do a lot of time, I take a lot of time and use a lot of detail in my tutorials, because I remember how frustrating it was when I started out. I just didn't get the help and the detail that I needed. How long is your wire? Taping your wire. Why are we doing all these things? They're really critical when we're first starting, because we don't have a platform. We don't know anything. So it's really, really important. And those are the tools that I want to provide to you. So I really encourage you to really look at technique. It's going to, I promise you, accelerate your journey in this ancient art. Additionally, today we're going to be using a ring clamp. If you don't have a ring clamp, don't worry. That's okay. Just make sure you keep your wires taped. So I have taped my wire about 1.25 inches from the bottom. Okay. I mean, from the top. So if this is the top of my wire, I've come up a little over 1.25 inches and I've started my first set of patterns. So what you're going to do is you're going to do 2 coils around your base wire, which is wire 1. Okay. Then you're going to go up over the top and come all the way back around the bottom. We're going to do this again, so don't worry about it. So presume I've done 2 coils. Now I'm going to go over wires 1 and 2, in between wires 1 and 2. And I'm going to do this all the way up. I'm going to go over wires 2 and 3, in between wires 2 and 3. I'm going to go over wires 3 and 4, in between wires 3 and 4. I'm going to go over wires 4 and 5, in between wires 4 and 5, and I'm going to go over wire 6, and in between wire 5 and 6, I'm going to come up and over and bring it all the way down. You're going to do 2 repeats of this pattern, okay? Now you're going to come all the way down. You're in the back, and you're going to come in between wires 2 and 3. And by the way, if I didn't say, I'm using 28 gauge weaving wire. So I'm using 28 gauge weaving wire in my 20 gauge. I use 26 gauge weaving wire on my 18 gauge. And I use 24 gauge weaving wire on my 16 gauge. Because this is a keychain and it's got to hold up, okay? The pendant, not worried about it, but the keychain, definitely. So now that I've come in between wires 1 and 2, I'm going to go over wires 3 and 4 7 times. You can do 5 times if you want this particular pattern. And if you look at this pattern, if you want this pattern where the long, I call this a braid or twisted weave. It's also known in the wire community as a modified sumac. Don't really know what that means. But at the end of the day, that's what I call it because that's what it looks like to me. If you want these weave patterns closer together, then do less coils in the center. So that's another tip. You don't have to follow me exactly. You can actually weave this any way you want, but this is what I'm teaching you today. So I'm going to do that 7 times. So I'm just going over wires 3 and 4 7 times. Got to spread that out. It's bugging me. That's my 5th, 6th, and 7th. Now you want to be careful when you're pulling your wire, especially in the middle, and this is really important to beginners. Advanced students are going to know this, that you don't pull super tight because you're going to bring these 2 wires right here in the middle too close together, and when you come back to your next series of rotations, you're not going to be able to get the wire in between there. So you just really want to be mindful about that. You also want to watch that you're not working on an angle. As a beginner, we have a tendency, because we don't know how to really straighten that wire. We haven't learned, our brain hasn't learned how to actually manipulate the wire to keep it in a certain direction. I promise you that will come in time. So after I do a couple series of rotations, I always push my wire back, especially 28 gauge weaving wire. Why? Because it slides a lot. So now I'm coming out the back and I finished my 7th rotation, and I'm going to repeat this pattern again. And I'm going to do 2 repeats of this braided twisted pattern. So I'm coming out the back. I'm going to go over wire 1 full rotation, and I'm going to repeat it. Go up and over wire 1 and 2, in between wire 1 and 2. Over wire 2 and 3, in between wire 2 and 3, over wire 3 and 4, oops, that was 3 and 5, in between wire 3 and 4, over wire 4 and 5, in between wire 4 and 5, over wire 6, back in between 5 and 6, and all the way over 6, all the way around the back. And now we're going to come back in between wires 2 and 3. Oh no, I'm sorry, you guys. We got to do this one twice. Oops. So now we're going to come all the way down to the bottom again, and we're going to go over wire one full rotation, and we're going to repeat this pattern. So one of the things I want to talk about now again for beginners is you want to watch, because we'll have a tendency to where you're starting your base wire here to push it over on an angle. See that? You don't want to do that. So you want to come in with your thumb and keep it straight. And if it helps you, and this is very helpful, by the way, when we're weaving, another tip, always keep your supporting hand, meaning I'm right-handed, so I'm weaving with my right. My left hand is my supporting hand, the hand that's holding and bracing your wires, as close to your weave as you're moving along. You will have so much more control. So that's a really good tip. The closer we are to our work, the more control we have. So now I'm going to do the same thing, go over wires 1 and 2, in between wires 1 and 2, over wire 2 and 3. Oops, I think that was 2 and 4. It was. In between wire 2 and 3, over wire 3 and 4, in between wire 3 and 4, over wire 4 and 5, in between wire 4 and 5, over wire 6, in between wire 5 and 6, and all the way around the back. So now, keeping my thumb here, because I want to keep that straight. Is my camera not focusing? All right. And then I'm going to cinch up. And now I'm going to push them down. So we're going to do this one more time, and then I'm going to complete, because I'm making these into earrings, 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 inches of repetitions. Okay. So let's call this one set. All right. So I'm going to probably do about, I'm probably going to do about 9 or 10 of, not 9 or 10 of these braided rows. Okay, so let me do this again for you. So now I'm going to come back in between wires 2 and 3. And I got myself a little kink in my wire. I'm working off the spool, and I'm going to wrap around wires 3 and 4 7 times. Now remember what I said, I'm going to stop here, and I got a little excited on that one, and I knew it when I did it. I could feel myself pulling on the wire. It happens a lot when we're relaxing sometimes. So, by the way, if you don't have one of these, get yourself an X-Acto blade. This is actually a wood carving tool. I've done a lot of different crafts in my life, and this really helps separating your wires. Well, let's see, what do I got? 5. Okay, that's 7. So now I'm going to kind of cinch that up, make sure everything's straight. I'm very picky. And I'm going to come down to the bottom again, and I'm going to, pardon me, I cannot talk today. You'd think it was Monday. I'm going to complete the next 2 series of what I call a twisted or braided weave. Now, another tip for beginners is don't pull really hard on your wire. Watch your tension. If you find yourself pulling really hard or pinching really hard, it means that you're fighting it. Don't fight it. The purpose of your hand here is support your wires, to work very closely to your weave. But don't pull on your wire very hard, especially 28 gauge. 28 gauge is very forgiving. So you can really manipulate that wire. Just think of it like you're just having, I know this is going to sound so corny, You're having this little dance with it. You're in control. Okay, so you can see the pattern now. And let's take a look, and look how much that cinched down. And by the way, you guys, if you don't tape your wire, especially as a beginner, your wires are gonna move up and down. Looks like my tape kind of loosened up a little bit, and I can see where these have slid up. And you see that, how I actually pulled it down through that tape? If that tape wasn't there, they would have kind of been all over the place by now. So all I'm doing is giving this a little wiggle and slowly pulling it down. All right, so there we have it. Let's take a look at the difference now. There's your 18. That's really something, isn't it? And here's your 16. Keychain, pendant, earrings. And this could also be an awesome bracelet. I'm actually working on one, but I'm duplicating this design right here on both sides. So this will be here, this will be here, okay? And then I'll roll off my ends a little bit differently to begin to attach my bracelet cuff. So it's going to be really cool. So this is, again, you guys, just as a little reminder, the purpose of this video is to take a design element and to turn it into a piece of art jewelry. Okay, I'll be right back. I would say if you're using 28 gauge, do 10 repetitions, meaning 10 of these double rows. If you're using 26 gauge, do 9. If you're using a 16, if you're weaving a 16 gauge wire and you're using a 24 gauge weaving wire, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or as many as you like. I'll be right back. Okay, everyone, so I'm back and I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 repetitions of that double braided twisted row. So that sets me at about 1.25 inches. Because these are going to be earrings, we're definitely going to have excess. But again, the idea is to take a design element and turn it into a piece of jewelry art. So what I've done is I've pulled out my selection of beads, and I have 2 6mm. These are apatite gemstones. It's a gorgeous stone. And my dangle drop is going to be these really pretty heart jaspers. So let me hold those up close to you. So I would recommend a 6mm stone or smaller. I wouldn't go any bigger for this piece design here, okay? These actually, yep, they're the same. For a minute, they look smaller. Anyways, and down here is 10mm. I'm not doing that for the earring. I'm gonna be using this darling little heart drop. You can use anything you want. You also don't have to drop anything from it if you don't want to. Again, it's your vision, but it's how you're taking something creative and turning it into a piece of jewelry art. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to coil off on the top. Now this is going to be the top, which is why it's taped, and we're going to talk about some importance here in a minute. So, and then I'm going to leave myself about, let's say, I think that will be sufficient. Yeah. I'm going to give myself about 5 inches of tail wire. Okay. And there's a reason why I'm doing that. So if you notice here, we've created a bail. This can actually be your bottom, and this could be your top. It just depends on the look that you want. But I made this my top. I like the little crown look. I think that's really cute. And I like it to actually be a little bit more tapered down on the bottom. But that's just a personal preference. So the reason why we are going to keep this taped, you do not want to remove this tape, is as we're creating our design element down on the bottom and pulling our wires around and up, and yanking and attaching them and working on all our different designs, it's going to pull these wires up and down. So you're going to lose the, what do you call it? I can't even think of the word, but you're not going to keep these level. You're going to have wires going up and down in different directions. So in order to keep mine from sliding even more, because I knew my tape wasn't exactly on there super tight, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that little tail wire there. I'm going to attach more tape. I don't want my wires moving. So I'm hoping that keeps them intact. Now, this is where you could use your ring clamp. You could have used your ring clamp all along the way. And let me just remove this wire. So here's another tip and trick. Anytime you have a wire coming in between two wires, instead of coming in and snipping it, if you can, it's called snap the wire. All you're going to do is wiggle, jiggle, wiggle, and it snaps clean off. So your wire, you can't even feel it when it does that because it snaps in between the two wires without having to snip it or cinch it down. It's really amazing. If you don't have tape on your wires when you're doing that, here's another tip. As I mentioned, I'm full of tips and techniques. You want to make sure that when you're snapping your wire, let's say I was going to snap this and I'm not, but if you were, you want to make sure that you hold your weave really tight. So as you're doing the wiggle jiggle, you're not sliding your weave up, okay? So just wanted to give you another tip there. So if you want to keep your wires intact and you're concerned about them sliding, you can come in with your ring clamp and you can clamp your design element down and then work from here. I found that when I have too much length, again, this is going back to what I had recommended or suggested earlier, that the further you are away from where you're working, so look at the distance between here and here, I'm 1.25 inches, right? Or a little more. The further away I am from where I need to work, the less control I'm going to have. So for me, I'm not going to use my ring clamp, but if you find it's helpful for you, you should use it. So now we're going to create this design. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to move these wires out of the way. So make sure you're working from, I'm on my front, right? Yeah. By the way, that's another little tip, not a technique, but a tip. Often when we get going in something and we get what I call in the zone, I get in a zone. I can literally feel the synapses in my brain firing off. It's a fantastic experience. That's why it's so great to do new things. We'll sometimes forget to make sure that we're maintaining the side that we're working on. So if you forget your front, make a big black X here with a Sharpie. It's a really good idea because I can't tell you where I've done a design and then went, oh my God, I did it on the wrong side and I couldn't change it. So I just ad-libbed and changed it to something else. So you want to separate your wires like that because we're going to pull these over. So you can use your pliers, which is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to pull these up. And then I'm going to do one at a time with my finger. And I'm going to pull this over. And as I get closer, I want to make sure that I keep a loop here, okay? Because remember, I'm going to be putting in my 6mm stone. And I like that 3D. You know, not everything always has to be flat and pressed down, as long as it's connected somewhere and it can't be pulled off. That's why I don't recommend, and I see a lot of beginners doing this. I did it in the beginning, but not for very long, because I learned very quickly, oops, never leave a loop open or a swirl open unless it's a super heavy gauged wire and you know it's not going to move. So you never want to leave something completely open, a little loop or a swirl, especially if it's 20 gauge, because all that's going to happen is somebody's hair is going to get caught on it and it's going to lift it up. And then when you're bringing your jewelry to market, you want it to hold up. Last thing you want is to have a reputation that, yeah, I bought her jewelry, but it fell apart. So you definitely want to give that some consideration. So all I'm going to do here now is I'm going to bring this down. And if you notice, I'm kind of pushing in on this a little bit. I'm kind of creating a little bit of a curve. You see that? So it's kind of like a C curve. So here's what you should have. Okay, is that a good enough visual? So I'm going to do the same thing here, and always turn your work around where it gives you the best working advantage. So I'm going to go away from myself this time because I can really see what I'm doing by doing that. And I can line up these two arcs here. See that? And then I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm just going to start curving this. And I'm using my thumbnail. Then I'm going to take a look. So that looks pretty good to me. Now I'm going to set my bead. And by the way, you guys, these are going to be earrings. I'm not going to make two because they're identical. So you would do the same thing at the same time. And here's a recommendation. If you're starting with earrings and you're new, earrings are not easy. The biggest problem with earrings is being symmetrical. So I highly recommend after you make your rows on one set, you make your rows on the next set, meaning your pattern of weaving wire. And then you match them up, always remember to cinch down. And then you bend one side and you bend the other side on your other earring. I promise you, if you do this, you will get closer to symmetry when you're starting. If you complete one earring, and then you go to do the other one, you won't no longer maybe have the same ability to gauge because you can adjust both of them before you close them off. So that's a really good tip. So anyways, I'm going to bend these down a little bit more. I know that's a little high for me. And did you see that? See how my wire wants to turn? Round wire naturally wants to roll while we're taped in the back. It's really good for you to see that. So I'm going to bring these down and I'm going to get my bead and I'm going to put it in there. Okay. Kind of get an idea of where it's going to sit. And now I'm going to weave that bead in before I close this off. So here's another really cool idea. As you're weaving something, and the longer you become proficient at this and you start to really progress thinking outside of everybody's tutorials, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's how you're learning. But what I mean by that is you'll start to think on your own. You'll no longer need, and you'll suddenly see something. So as I'm working, I'm thinking how cool it would be to coil these all the way up. So if you wanted, you could most definitely coil these wires all the way up just to create a different design element. I'm not going to do that now because I would have coiled these while they were flat, not while I've created a shape. Or, hey, it's just too much work to keep pushing them down and getting in between this. And I don't really want to bring them back up. Just wanted to give you an idea of where you can keep going. It's really unlimited. So now I'm going to get, and it's really important, I'm going to get a 26 and maybe a 24. I'm pretty sure I can fit a 24 gauge weaving wire in there. But I'm not sure I want that much bulk on this 20 gauge wire. So I'm going to check it really quick. Give me a minute. I am looking for my 24. I have a Lazy Susan where I keep all my wire spools on. And it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful for being able to access my wire immediately. Yeah, I think this will be fine. I don't think that will be a problem at all. So I'm going to cut 3 inches. You don't need any more than that. And I'm using 24 gauge. And the reason why I'm using a thicker gauge for this bead, 1, I don't want it to spin. 2, I don't want it to snap. And 28 gauge weaving wire is very, very thin. And as you know, and if you don't know, your wire naturally hardens as we're manipulating and working with it. So you really don't want to have a really thin wire at all when you're attaching your gemstones or beads, if you can avoid it. If the hole is too small and all you can get away with is a 28 gauge wire, then work with what you have. But anyways, I am going to put this wire through, and I'm coming from underneath, and I'm going to center it up just to get an idea of where it's at, okay? And I'm going to bend this wire up so it stops moving on me. So that's another tip. You know, I don't want it to keep sliding back and forth. So I'm bending that wire up. And I'm going to start coiling in, and I'm going to go down. And here's the reason. The reason why I'm going down away from the bead is I don't want the bead to slide up. So you got to think about those things when you're working on something, what your intention is, what you don't want to happen, and that'll come with time. Now, 24 gauge weaving wire is not super light, meaning that it's not going to just slide into anything you want. So I'm actually turning this wire because I don't want to pull on my core wires. 20 gauge is soft. So I am just pulling on the wire itself. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And I might slide this up, you guys. And I'm just going to, it's a little floppy at first because it's not square. Square wire really holds everything in its shape. And I just want to cinch this up. Okay. Now I'm going to hold this really firmly, and I'm just going to give it a little wiggle. Don't pull super tight. Notice how that already pulled my wires apart, but that's fine. That'll all change here in a minute. And then I'm going to do this 3 times. I'm going to feed this 24 gauge wire through. Straighten my wire, hold really tight. And feed it through. All right, I'm going to stop there and I'm going to go around to the other side. And I'm going to do the same thing. Really want that bead tight in there. I don't really want it spinning. If you like your bead spinning, that's fine. I don't. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing. Feed this wire through. And let me take a look at this. So now, do you see what I mean? Oh, I'm so glad this happened. Me holding this wire, do you see how this round wire turned on itself? See how it's sideways? It's no longer center. So we just push it up. Round wire, believe it or not, is harder to learn with than square. Square feels awkward at first. Square can twist on itself, but you have so much more control with square. I probably use square 75% of the time over round, if not more. So now I know that I've got plenty of gap here, and I'm going to roll this down even more, and I'm going to roll this side down even more. I really want it to kind of snug in my stone. And I want it to be symmetrical and straight, because what we're going to do, we're going to push these, not push, we're going to connect these wires in the back. See how it keeps wanting to roll on itself? Just making some corrections here. I'm thinking about how far down I want that stone. You can have it anywhere you want it. Okay, I'm going to turn around to the back. I know these wires are way too long, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect them in the back. Like that. So I'm going to cut this down. Now, I know measuring is really important to people when they're first starting out, and I think it's very critical. So I'm going to cut this at about, less is more, I mean, more is less with wire. Always cut off a little bit at a time. I'm going to do about ½ an inch. So from here to here. And I know that's going to be plenty. Just want you to start off that way so that you can see what I'm talking about, okay? And I actually want to bring this down more, which is going to make me cut that wire off even more. Didn't want it up that high. So do you see that? I like the little loop there. I like that opening gap. And you can add more wires on your way down. I might do that, meaning I might coil in some more. But right now I'm focused on my back. So I know that this is still too long. Because remember, they're going to meet middle, or they can meet side by side, but I'm going to have mine meet middle. So I'm going to support my bead. I'm holding it, okay? Holding it very firmly. And I'm squeezing it together because I want it to stay center. Remember how that wire rolled to the side? So now I'm going to cut this down even more. And I'm going to take it down to about a little over 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to set myself up. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this in. Okay? Because I need to set myself up. And I just turn that tip in just a little bit so I can twist this down. And then I'm going to come from the side, and I want to turn the side in, okay? I'm going to go back to the front. Make sure you're squeezing this super tight so you remain in your center. So I'm really supporting this and squeezing it really tight. So now I'm going to teach you another trick. I don't like sharp edges, and because this is 20 gauge wire, I use files a lot. This one in particular is 100/180. The bigger the grit, the softer the sand level is, or the grit level is. The smaller the grit, the more coarse it is, okay? So I'm going to take the 100 side, and I am going to file off that flat edge, and I'm working on an angle. I don't want a blunt edge on the back, and I don't want anything sharp. So that's all I'm going to do is I'm kind of tapering it. See that? Now, because this is such a little short piece of wire, I use these, not a lot, but they're amazing. This is a short jawed, petite tipped flat nose plier. And it's by Xuron. Remember how I said the closer you are to your work, the more control you have. The further away you are from your work, the less control you have. When you have a shorter jaw plier, you're much closer to your work, and it gives you a lot more strength, okay? So you got to be careful when you're pressing down. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to gently anchor off this wire, and I'm going to push that tip down. Now I can feel this moving underneath. So I'm gonna just push it down a little bit for now, not a whole lot. I can feel my piece turning. And so now I am going to, and I cut it a little bit short, you guys, which I can actually extend that length by pulling my wire down more. So this is a really cool opportunity to see me make some corrections. So you work with what you have. So now I'm going to turn this one in. And now that I know that I want it a little bit longer, I'm going to trim it not as short. Okay. And I'm going to turn this down a little bit. And I'm going to hold my bead super center. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm filing on an angle. I'm going down like this, okay? And I'm tapering that tip so it's not sharp or blunt. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the front here, and I'm just going to push this wire up a little bit more. Did you see that? How I gave myself more wire just by closing this loop off a little bit. I just pushed this up, gave me more wire. Now I might have to cut this one, probably, yeah, to compensate for that wire. So I'm going to push that one up, and I may just cross them over because you're not looking at the back anyways. And so now I'm going to hold my bead super firm, and I'm going to push that down and lock it in, and you will find these amazing. Now, by the way, these pliers can dig into your metals really easily. So I don't use them for a lot of things, but I am going to trim that just a little bit, you guys, and then file it down again. I'm just tapering that down, holding my bead super, super tight, and I'm going to crimp this in. So again, round wire constantly wants to turn on itself. I'm anchoring off the wire itself and really pushing that down. These are awesome for this. You can't get this same leverage, or it just doesn't work the same with like chain nose. I tell you, tools are everything. They don't have to be really expensive, but it's what they do. Now, if you want like precision lines when you're making 90-degree angles and it's important that they're super even, you really want good precision flat nose pliers. So there we have it. This took a little bit longer than normal, but I really wanted you guys to see all the little things that happen along the way. So I am going to complete some more coils here. I'm going to use this wire, and I'll be right back. Okay, I added 5 coils in total on each side. I want to show you another technique. In order to get your wire when you're working inside such a tight little or limited area, see that little piece of wire sticking up? If you push your wire, this is a really cool technique, back, away from the core wire that you're wrapping it on. Do you see that? I push that wire back. It's much easier to get in there, and if you have really petite tipped, very sharp nippers, I've had these over 2 years, and I bought 2 pairs because I was afraid they weren't going to make them anymore. They've outlasted my $150 flush cutters, which I'll never buy again. Anyways, you can get way down in there. Way, way down. So your wire isn't sticking up at all. And then all you got to do is cinch it. Really cool technique. And then you just cinch it down. Same thing here. I'm going to push. You see that wire? I'm going to push that wire or move that wire back, away from the core wire, away from where I've got it coiled in, so that I can get down in there, as far down in, and nip that back. So it's not sticking out and it's not visible. Felt like something was crawling on me. I hate that feeling. Okay, so here's what we got, right? Isn't that cool? Can you see where we're going now? Now, I'm going to stop and let you know about, again, this is all about taking a design element and turning it into something else. Do you see how I did this? Okay, I would do the same thing on the other side to make it a bracelet design element. So if you can visualize this, which I know you can, the same design on this side, that would be my focal piece for my bracelet. Okay, and then I would either attach a strand of beads or I would make a band, okay, on each side. So the sky's the limit, gang. This is why I'm always giving you all these ideas. Now what we're going to do is, remember this wire here that we left this 5/6 inch tail? We're going to come and we're going to bring it back down where we had brought it up and through. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to cross these wires, these center wires over. So I'm going to bring this one this way and this one this way. We're making like a diamond, okay? Or a triangle, really. And you want to leave enough gap space because we're going to be taking these wires and we're going to be tucking them inside this gap, okay? So now we're going to do something a little bit different. You know what, you guys? I just changed my mind. I do that a lot. I'm actually not going to keep this wire. I'm going to bring it in a little bit later. I just changed my mind. Okay, so I'm coming back up and I'm going to make sure I have 3 coils and I'm in between 2 wires. So I'm going to do wiggle, jiggle, wiggle, and I'm holding my weave really firmly, okay? And I'm just going to move that aside. Sorry, but I change things as I go because I can. All right, so now I'm going to teach a really cool technique. Remember what I said about creating enough gap space so that we can tuck our wires in there? Another thing that I found very difficult as a newbie, a beginner in the ancient art of wire, was creating symmetry with my bail. And I want you to think of it as if we're making a bail right now, and you can use this technique on any wire or project. I'm going to change over to my bent nose. If you don't have bent nose, you don't have to, but I found my gap. And what I found when I first started and I was going to create a bail, taking each wire and bending them over to create perfect symmetry, really struggled with that. Maybe you don't, but I would find that most do. What you're going to do is you're going to come in at the diamond, okay? At the top of the diamond or the top of the teepee, whatever your vision is. And you're going to squeeze these 2 wires together. And that is going to create perfect symmetry on each side. Do you see that? So we've now brought our wires together. And if you need to, you just come in and just tweak that side out a little bit more. But they're lined up. And you do that when you're going to make a bail. So if I was going to weave this all the way up, which you absolutely could, sky's the limit of what you want to create this design element into and what you want it to be when you're done. This is going to be earrings for me. So this is going to be my top and this is going to be my bottom. Or this could be my bottom and this could be my top. It's really up to you. No, actually, you guys, this is my bottom for my earring. Sorry. God, I'm so confused. So now I'm going to come in with that wire. Remember that wire I cut off? And I am going to close these 2 off together. So you can use 28 gauge, you can use 24, 26, whatever gauge wire you want. You can use half round, which I think would be really pretty there. But since I cut this, I'm going to use this. So all I'm going to do is I am going to create a series of coils, and I'm going to leave about 1 inch tail on this end, and I want this end really clean, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So I'm going to come around the back. I'm going to hold my wire. You do it any way it works for you, and I'm going to coil off. Now here's what's super key. Do not pull super tight. I need that gap space. See that little tiny hole in between the wires? I need that gap space because I'm going to be running my wire through there. So I don't want you to pull super tight. I want you to just gently wrap it. And you can coil as many times as you like. I'm going to do 5. And I'm just very gently, without pulling super tight, wrapping my wire around. Now I'm going to bring this wire up, it's way too long. Okay, I don't need that much length. I'm going to cut this back about 1.5 inches. And so I have a tutorial on this, and it's called How to Hide Your Wire. I'm going to push that wire up, and I'm going to make, if you will, like a question mark or loop in my wire. I'm going to get my pliers, wherever they are, and I am going to feed this wire in that gap. Takes a little pushing. It's so hard to do this, you guys, under the camera. There we go. Do you see that wire coming out? You see it coming out? Trying to stay focused. I can't stay focused. It's the camera. But do you see that coming out right there? Okay, beautiful. It's exactly what I want. So now I'm going to do the same thing before I pull this wire all the way through. It's called How to Hide Your Wire. And I'm going to leave my loop just like that for right now. I don't want to pull it super tight because I have to get this through the back. It's the same thing. I'm going to make a question mark. I'm going to grab the tip. And I'm going to feed that wire through the back. That came through the front. I don't want it to come through the front. Oops. Got to get this cleaned up. You want your wire really clean. You don't want any kinks, and if possible, any bends in it. If this is too hard for you, it is not something easy to learn. Then just tie your wire off. I really like this. I use it all the time. Okay. See me feeding that through? I don't know why my camera isn't focusing as much today. I'm going to pull it through, but I'm going to leave it. Now, here's what's really important. You want to hold your weave, and you want to make sure you keep a good loop here. You do not want this upper wire to kink. You want a good loop there. See, like that. And now what you're going to do is you're going to hold really firmly. You're holding the weave. The coiled weaves. I'm using my thumbnail to hold it down. And as you're holding it, you're going to pull this through. And you're going to literally feel it cinch inside those 5 coils. It literally cinches in there. Okay? I'm going to do the same thing on the back. I'm going to pull those wires through until I feel it snug in. Well, that just snapped clean off, which is good. It's what I wanted. And this is called How to Hide Your Wire. And there we have it. This one crossed over a little bit. No worries. I'm going to correct that. Now I'm going to press my wire down. And I'm going to pull this wire really tight again. That's going to tighten up the entire coil. You can just do regular weaving there, you guys, and do a couple coils here, then do your wraps, and then do a couple coils here. But I just wanted to give you this as a little bit more advanced. Very hard to master if you're just starting out. But hey, tips, tricks, and techniques, everything makes difference in everything. So I'm going to go ahead and do my wiggle jiggle. I'm holding my weave really tight until it snaps clean off. Okay, so I'm going to move that out of the way. So that took a little bit of while, but I wanted to show you how to do that. And then if I have just a little guy sticking out, careful not to cut your other wire. This is so thin. I'm just going to snug them in. Isn't that cool? Love this look. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to bring these wires here, we're going to turn it over, and we're going to bring them around back. We're going to cross over. We're following that diamond, and we're going to bring that one over. See what I got going here? Now you can have that look in the front if you want. I'm just doing it in the back. It's up to you what you want. I don't want my ends showing in the front, which is why I'm bringing these around back. So here we go. And now I am going to tuck my wires in this gap. Now I know these are way too long, so I'm going to start setting myself up again. I'm going to bend this wire this way, holding it very firm, you guys. See how I kind of bent it like that? And I'm going to bend this wire, holding these two together very firmly, kind of creating a 90 for each of them. And you want to watch that you keep symmetry where these wires are. I'm now going to cut off, and you really only need about, 3/4 of an inch. And again, I'm going to train my wire again. So I'm holding super firm. And if you feel like your wires are going to move too much, because round wire does that, you can support all your wires with a plier and then bend this in. It's up to you. I'm going to use a very thin flat nose and see if that gives me what I want. If it doesn't, I'm going to do it by hand. Nope, I'm going to do it by hand. So now I'm going to bring this wire through that gap. Just feeding it through. And I'm going to keep holding this very firmly and feed that through. I'm going to open up this gap a little bit simply by stretching my tools. That's another little technique. I stretched my pliers inside of there to open up that gap. Now I'm going to hold really firmly back here and continue and just pull that up. I'm not going to tighten it completely down yet, but that's what you should have. Be right back. Gotta let the pup out. Okay, I'm back. So here's my front. Okay, now I'm going to do this same thing. I'm holding really firmly, and I'm going to set myself up, turn this tip in first, and then come a little back from this loop. You'll have a lot more control, and I'm going to turn it in, holding really firm. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to bring this one over, kind of creating some room between them. Before I cut these wires, I'm going to make sure they're lined up in the front. This one I need to move up a little bit. See how they're not perfectly lined up? That's why you need that gap space. So this one I'm going to squeeze a little bit more. This one I'm going to bring down some. Just a lot of adjustments and corrections. That's all we're making. Just little movements at a time. Okay, looking for my symmetry here. Make sure my wraps are down. Need to tighten this one up. That looks pretty good to me. All right. So now I'm going to cut these, and I'm going to cut these to where they connect or tuck away in here, in that little spot right there. So I'm going to cut that. Now that's another little thing in the wire art world, is knowing where to cut your wire. Honestly, you guys, it's a process. It's something learned, and that looks too long to me. So I'm going to say, if I had to measure this, where's my, got way too many tools going on here. Oh, sorry about all the arm and the hand. I got so much stuff in the way I can't find what I'm looking for. It was here. It's my caliper, but I can't find it. Dang, I was going to measure it for you. I'm going to say that's probably a couple of millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this inside the loop. And I'm going to connect it in there. I'm going to squeeze it down. So it hides it. You can't see it. See that? I'm going really slow for you guys so that you can see, or at least I hope you can see. And I'm going to get my little stubbies. These are great for this because I've got so much leverage. Wow, what a difference. I tell you, tools are everything. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to turn this in more. I'm going to cut my wire. Leave myself about 2 millimeters. Turn that tip in. I have this camera on steady and it doesn't seem like it's focusing that in. I don't know, you guys. That's what I mean. Not a videographer, so I'm hoping when I look back on this thing, it will not be blurry. These are amazing. Just absolutely amazing. Just tuck that right inside that little pocket there. Okay, so if you notice your wraps sliding up, that's okay. Don't worry about it. You can take them off if you want. I'm going to leave mine on because that's all going to go away in a minute. You can also come in, and maybe I'll show you that. You can come in with half round wire. What are we into? We're into 1 hour and 2 minutes. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to slide these off. I'm going to show you the difference with half round. And I'm going to use a 22 gauge. And I'm going to stay on the spool. So here's a 22 gauge half round. If you're new to half round wire, it's flat on one side. You're not going to be able to see this because it's such a tiny piece of wire. And it's semi-domed on the other side. They basically take a piece of wire and they cut it in half. It's a round piece of wire. So all I'm going to do this time is I'm going to wrap 5 wraps, and I'm working off the spool. And I'm going to use half round. I changed my mind because I realized this is going to hold up a lot better. I don't like 20 gauge weaving wire for the hide your wire technique. It's just so thin. Okay, so that's my 4th. This is my 5th, and I'm going to slide it down and bring it around the back and trim it. I like that a lot better, guys. So I'm just going to cinch this down. Remember, this is going to be my earring. And this is my front. That is my back. This is my top. I keep going backwards because I keep thinking, I know I'm thinking out loud, you guys. I keep thinking that I'm making a pendant. And I didn't live myself enough, so I'm going to make it 4 wraps. All right. That's given me a lot more support now than that very thin wire. So now what I'm going to do, okay, you guys, you have to decide on if this is the top of your earring. Okay, unless you're making it into a pendant, it can be top or bottom, or this is the bottom of your earring. I'm still debating if I want, this is my top and this is my bottom, because I'm going to have a little tiny heart hanging from here. And I could have all these up. I just want you to see what I'm talking about here. So I could put these up here, meaning I'm going to coil these off into loops up here, and a jump ring would go through it, and my ear hook would go through it, or my ear hook is going to go through here. I'm going to make one coil, and I'm going to add my heart down here, which is going to change this design a lot. So I'm thinking, thinking. I know you guys are all going, oh, I know what I'm going to do. By the way, do whatever you want. I'm just thinking on my own what I want to do, because if I do this heart from here, I would take these and swirl them off differently. Okay, I'm torn. I'm going to make this my bottom, okay? So this is where my bead's going to go. So now I know this is way too long, you guys. I'm going to bend my wires back, just like this. Now you know why we got this taped again, or this would have slid all over the place. Okay? And I'm going to make a loop, and I'm debating on whether or not I want to make a double loop. And because I'm going to hang this bead from it, I'm going to use the second step on my 6-step pliers. It's facing me. And I'm just going to roll my wires over. Okay? And as debating, do I want a double loop? Because I'm kind of changing it up a little bit. If I want a double loop, I need to separate these wires right here. Okay? See that? I'm separating my wires. And now I'm going to turn my wrist all the way towards me. So this part, the second step, is around the back, so that I can pull my wires up and over it. Watch you don't twist your piece like I'm doing. So I'm just pushing my wires up and over it. Just making changes as I'm going. Now I'm going to twist this down even more. Just rolling my wrist towards me so that I really tighten up on that loop that I'm making. So I'm going to bring this, I pulled my pliers out, I'm putting them back through so that I can bring this back towards the front. There you go. So I'm just thinking, do I want that many down there? I don't know, you guys. Let me cut these. I'm thinking about it. And squeeze them together. So I don't really want a lot of gap, since this is the bottom. This is going to be a big earring. How long is this earring going to be? No, I've made 3 inchers, but it's going to definitely be for someone that likes bigger earrings. I do. I don't like itty bitty earrings. Everybody's different. Never think for someone else. I'll guarantee you, when I sell, I'll think, oh God, something I don't like will never sell, and it sells right away. So get out of your head, right? Okay, I'm just curling these tips in and thinking about whether or not I want this many coils. All right, what do you guys think? That needs to be coiled in a little bit more. I'm making adjustments on these coils so that they're lined up. And then I'm going to put my plier in. And I really want these kind of snugged up into the wire. That make any sense? So I'm just going to push these in. All right. This is the thing about round wire. Do you see how it keeps wanting to turn on itself? Square wire won't do that. But I wanted you guys to see it in round. I really wanted you to see the difference. 18 gauge, so we've got 16, 18, and 20. What a difference, huh? It's really remarkable how much it changes everything. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to trim these up. I didn't like them showing. I didn't want to see them. And I'm going to separate them a little bit and turn them out. Now you're going to need a rather big jump ring if you're going to use a jump ring to attach your dangle, or you could just leave it like that. So now we're going to do, since this is the top of my earring or the bail, it's going to be a bail for something. It's going to be an earring or a bracelet design element or a necklace pendant. I'm going to remove my tape. And remember what I said earlier about low residue. And we're almost done. But boy, do these wires want to roll on me. And you're going to really feel this if you're new to wire wrapping. You're going to feel, sorry you guys, you're going to feel this wire starting to roll on itself. So I'm removing my tape. And you see how easy that is to remove? And I'm just going to scratch off any gum residue from the tape, because it's been on there a long time and my body heat has warmed it up and melted some of that gum or glue that's actually on our tape. And you can always scrub this off first with a toothbrush or a wire brush if you're concerned about it still being attached and you're going to a liver of sulfur it, which is I am going to do. But it's just a little tiny bit, and I'm pretty sure I got most of it off. Okay, now I know these are way too long to make my bail, okay? So you want to make sure before you cut your wires back that you leave yourself at least an inch, okay? So, because you need, remember, more is less. And I'm going to use my super flush cutters. So these are heavy, heavy duty. These are from my stained glass days. And you're just, I can cut 3 at a time. So I just want to cut them back. I don't need a lot of wire to work with. Now you want to make sure when you bend your wire up that you bend it above the weave, because I'm going to bend these around. So I'm going to bend up 3, about 1 millimeter above my weave. And I'm going to bend up these 3, about 1 millimeter above my weave. I'm going to get that tape residue off there. Okay, so I know these are going to be too long for my bail, but that's okay. I'm going to cut off as I go. Now, you have a couple options here. You can just do the 2 ones and bring these off and swirl them. However you want your design to look, it's really going to be up to you. Sorry, things bug me and I see them and I'm like, I got to correct that. So I'm going to trim these a little bit more. I'm going to take off about another 1/8 of an inch. So that's going to leave me 3/4 of an inch. Perfect. And I'm going to separate them so that I have working room. Now hold your piece very firmly, okay? Or they're going to roll. The whole thing's going to want to roll. So I'm holding it super firm. I'm just giving myself some working room, you guys. Separating my wires out a little bit. Okay. I am going to get, where's my 6th step? Right here. I'm going to use the 3rd one. Okay. Let's get this down a little bit. I'm going to start setting myself up and rolling it towards me. Did you see that? Always try to set yourself up. Knowing what you want to do will make it easier for you, because now I can get my plier in there. I'm going to come down about, 5-6 millimeters, and I'm going to roll this, and then I'm going to adjust my hand, because ergonomically we can only turn in a little bit. I'm going to roll this towards me and down. And notice how they don't want to evenly line up. So I'm going to push it down with my thumb. They're going to be a little uneven at first. So this one's got to come down. Little tweaking here, because I'm going to cut these. I'm just getting them lined up. Okay, that's what we got. You can make it smaller. If you're going to use it as a pendant, you don't want it much smaller. You got to get your clasp or your lobster claw, whatever you're making for your hook, you got to get it through here unless you added another bail. Now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm using number 3. Let me get myself started. I'm just going to start the curve. It just makes it a lot easier. Just used my thumbnail to bring these forward. I don't have a lot of room to complete that. So I'm going to have to, there's many different ways to do this. This is not the only way. I'm going to have to get in here and push these down with my thumb. There we go. Now we're lining up. These are a little bent off to the side too much for me. That's okay. That's round wire. Boy, does it want to turn. Just going to straighten them up a little bit. So there's some symmetry here. And we're almost done. Okay. Now let's see what we got going on here in the front. These are twisted off, which bugs the dickens out of me. So I'm going to straighten them simply by turning them. Now, if you have any dowel anywhere, which I do, it can be anything. It can be a tool. This is actually used for the little winding gizmo. I'm going to put that through there because I want this to line up. And here's a really cool tip or technique. I'm going to take my flat nose and I'm going to press these against that wire. You could have coiled these one at a time, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to now take off a lot of this length because it's going to make it a lot easier for me. Okay, that's a lot easier now. Now I can control my wire a little bit more. I'm going to come in, curl that down, and I'm holding really firmly. It's very hard to get all your wires to line up evenly with when you have this many together. You have to do, in my opinion, a lot of personal tweaking to get them to line up. Then I'm going to start pushing them in to themselves. And see, they're starting to line up now. So that's good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate these two out because I'm only going to dangle my bead from the two center ones. I'm going to separate those two out. See that? Isn't that pretty? A lot of tweaking, you guys. I'm going to tuck these into themselves. Flat nose really helps with that because I don't want to squeeze these in. I don't want to squeeze them together like this. I want to tuck them in to themselves. Almost done, you guys. I have very long-winded videos, And that's because, and if you ever watch Kelly Jones, I watched her when I first started. I loved her. She's a very big weaver. I like weaving, but I like all sorts of stuffs. And she's just phenomenal teacher, and she's so sweet. And I love her doggy, Gracie. I don't watch her anymore, but as a beginner, you know, she's great. She's just great. But anyways, we're only going to put our bead, but see how nice that is? So I'm going to turn these out a little bit more. I like that look. Reminds me of a crown a little bit. Okay. Hey, look where we're going. And I'm going to bring that down a little bit more. You guys, this is your design. This is going to make a really cool earring. So this is going to be my, I was going to make this my top and this my bottom, and I'm sorry, I keep changing. You guys put your bead wherever you want. You have so many options. What do you think? Bottom and top, or top and bottom? I'm going to leave this my top. Yeah. Why not for now? Change things up, right? So let's add our bead and we're almost done. So isn't that cool, you guys? All right, so I'm going to use, how much gauge wire can I use in this? I can't use 20. I think I can get away with 22. So I'm going to use a 22 gauge wire to connect this heart jasper. And I am going to cut myself about 3 inches. So let's get all these guys out of my way, because they's in my way. Where's my cutter? So I got 3 inches, and I'm going to show you a really cool technique to close off the bottom. So I just want to see. Yeah, that's going to be so cute from here, huh? And if you don't like it, cut it out. Don't include it at all. You can use a round bead. I just thought something different down there dangling instead of another round bead. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a swirl. And I'm going to get my, wherever they are, as fine a tip round nose as you have. This is 22 gauge. Always try to use as thick a gauge as possible when you're hanging anything dangly. And I'm going to turn this in on itself. Do you see that little tail coming around right there? So I'm going to turn it in on itself. See that? And then I'm going to trim it. Should have something like that. Then I'm going to get my little stubby nose, guys, and I'm going to flatten it so that I can see what I'm doing here. And I'm going to roll it and squeeze it into itself. And there's still too much length there, so I'm going to cut it again. And I'm going to squeeze it in to itself. I want as little gap as possible. Okay. Now, if you've never done a swirl or spiral, it's a roll. You're going to roll your wrists towards each other. So I'm holding this on an angle on the outside of the arc, and I'm pushing these into each other. Ooh, I just pinched my wire. That's all right. I'm going to show you a really cool trick. That's what I meant by these. You probably don't want to use these when you're making swirls on really thin wire. Reason is it will eat your wire. It will bite into it very, very quickly. But this is another reason why I do not use tarnish resistant. You cannot ever correct a mistake if you've bitten to your wire, because you've just bit that fine little plate of dipped coating off your copper wire. I don't recommend using it. Definitely not if you're going to take it to market. I've had so many people call me that are not my clients and ask me if I could rewrap their stones because their wire is peeling. So that's why I don't use tarnish resistant wire. No offense to Pear Wire, that's their #1 seller, but it don't work for me. Okay, so I'm gonna make a small spiral. That's what I made. And I'm gonna square it up. And what I mean by that is I don't want it rounding into itself. So I'm gonna go like this and flatten that up. See that? That little bend there. Then I'm gonna come around here, and all I'm doing is just straighten it up. I just made a little bit of a neck so it sits more center. Made a little neck right there. I'm gonna run it through my heart. That doesn't sound good, right? So we have this darling little spiral on the bottom. And then I'm going to come right at the top of this heart and I'm going to bend my wire towards me. Now I know I've got to get it in there. You guys, you can either use a jump ring to attach this, but I'm going to attach mine to it. So I'm going to be using #2. Okay, I'm hoping that's big enough. Let me see how wide that is. If not, I'll open it up. And my neck is bent away from me, okay? I'm gonna roll my wire towards me, hoping that's a big enough loop. I'm going to bring this underneath the heart, around the back, or however you wanna call it. And I'm gonna open that up. So here's what you should have. Big gap there. Because I'm gonna run that if I can. If I can't, I'm gonna have to use a jump ring. I'm gonna try to run this. A little tricky because I got all these wires in the way. Through here. Might be able to do it. Let's see. I don't know, you guys. Let's see. I might be able to correct this. I just don't want it to be super sloppy, but I always like my dangles attached. So I'm going to swing that around. I'm looking for my center. I'm using my hands a lot in this circumstance because I want to see if I can get this to stay and look neat. I know this is quite the task, so you know what, you guys? You might just want to make your drop bead separate and then just add a jump ring and attach it. But I like mine attached. So I'm going to come in here and correct this little kink in my wire, kind of rounding it out a little bit. Straighten that out. Let's see if I'm going to be able to pull this off. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm liking the way that's hanging. Wow, this is such a substantial earring. It's going to be beautiful. Whoever has these, they're going to be beautiful on. You know what? It's not working. It's just too much gap in there. So what I'm going to do is just take her out. Okay, I know it looks all dangled, but I'm actually going to use this wire. I'm going to bend it towards me, and I'm going to put a jump ring in. So I'm going to bend that wire and bring her around, really clean her up. Straighten everything up. Get that to come forward again. And wrap it around. Okay. One more time. Center. So now I'm going to turn this way. Which way? Wait a minute. I know I'm thinking out loud, you guys. I need my my jump ring to go down. So that's perfect. Okay, I'm going to cut this loose wire back here and tuck it in. We're pretty much done if you guys are tired of watching. But hey, you're not paying for it, so that's a good thing, right? All right, so I'm just going to get a jump ring. You want a substantially strong jump ring. I would recommend using 18 gauge at its thinnest. That's just me. I don't like things being able to fall off or pull off. I'm not seeing a tiny enough jump ring there. I don't want something really big. That's pretty. This braided jump ring is pretty. So let's try that. I love twisted jump rings. Let's run this through here. Let's put on my piece. I need my short-jawed pliers. Okay, you guys, we're done. So this is going to be an adorable earring. It's going to measure about, looks like 2.5 inches. It's going to be gorgeous. It's just absolutely going to be gorgeous. So again, we've taken a design element. We've made a pendant, a set of earrings, a keychain out of one design. Isn't that cool? Very, very cool. Love it. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this tutorial. We're about an hour and 25 minutes into this, 30 minutes into this. Anyways, I wish for all of you all that you wish for yourselves. Have a magical, wonderful wire wrap day. Bye for now.